Hi, this is Bill Seaback, and this is part 5 and the closing of our interview prep for your upcoming interview. What I want to share in this segment is just a few thoughts about how you should handle the compensation question, how you should handle the why do I want to leave my current company question, and about the closing of the interview, and specifically how you exit yourself from the interview in the most positive manner possible. So we've covered now 98% of the interview, but the last 2% is really critical, because it's going to be the last impression that you leave with the employer, and it needs to be a positive one. Usually the question of money doesn't come up until the end. I always counsel candidates and employers the same way, that I think it's bad form to talk about money, because we've already sort of discussed with them sort of the range where you need to be, and certainly for the first interview, we don't really need to be nailing anybody down on compensation, because the compensation question is sort of relative specifically to the candidate that comes in, and is very different. One candidate's compensation needs are going to be extremely different than another, and very seldom do companies ever retain us to do a search and give us a very specific range. They usually say, go get us the best talent that we can, and a lot of times the market conditions affect the compensation question, and your own expectations of where you want to be affect the compensation issue, and that's something that we'll actually handle face-to-face, or on the phone rather, prior to your next interview. If you decide you want to move forward, then we'll really start to take a much closer look at compensation. But nevertheless, just so that you're prepared, if an employer says, look, what are you making now, or what do you want to make, I really believe that your response, the dynamics of your response ought to be that you don't want to talk about compensation in the first issue. You're here to explore the opportunity, and if it makes sense to move forward, I'll be prepared to respond to your best offer. Again, you can tell the employer, look, Mr. Employer, money's important. It's important to you. It's important to me, obviously. Your headhunter called me, and I'm here to evaluate this thing. If we decide together that we want to move forward, then I'll be more than happy to be prepared to respond to your very best offer. What you're doing here is very politely and very professionally telling the employer, look, not now. This isn't the right time to be talking about money, and we can handle that in a much more comfortable manner at an appropriate time. Now, the dynamics about compensation are this. Look, this is my client, and I have a relationship with this company, and my job is to go out and identify and attract talent. It's also to negotiate compensation. And my personal belief is that as the headhunter, I have a relationship with you, and I have a relationship with my client, and my job is to find a way to bring the two of you together in a way that not just brings you to the organization, but brings you to the organization with a smile on your face. And because we negotiate deals every day, we're uniquely qualified to do that, and to do that without offending anybody's sensibilities as the third party. My clients know that I don't misspend their money, and my candidates know that I'm going to try to maximize their opportunities within market conditions, and that usually means a compromise on both ends. But it's always a fair compromise, and in the end, as the candidate, you always have the ability to say, what, Bill, I'm just not going to go forward because that's not what I need. I need this, and always the market conditions prevail. And if there are no other candidates, obviously you get what you want, and if there are other candidates, then you either compromise with what you want based on what the competitive candidates are needing, or you just decide to pass on the opportunity. But either way, in 14 years of headhunting in this business, I've only had one deal that really didn't come together because of compensation, and that's because I felt like the candidates, their expectations were really unreasonable in terms of what their true value was in the marketplace. But we'll handle that over the phone together and one-on-one, and we'll work very closely to get you everything that you feel that you need. But during the first interview, it's just not good form and here's why. Most of us, especially those of you who are in the business development or client service capacity, who are used to negotiating deals, most of us feel that we can, always get what we want. But what we fail to remember is that when it comes to selling ourselves, we tend, and when we find ourselves in a position where we want something, for example, like a job, we tend to start to give away little things that we think are going to help us to be in better position to get what we want. And normally what that means for candidates is that they start to get nervous, and they start giving up little pieces of information because they want to be competitive, quote unquote competitive, and then they start giving away dollars. And the fact of the matter is that the first person who mentions money is going to lose anyway in that sort of a situation, when you're on site with the employer. And if you're making $80,000, let's say, and you tell the employer you want $82,000, and we know that you actually need more than that, guess what? If you've told the employer $82,000, I'm not going to be able to get you 83 or 84 or 85 because you already put a number on the table, and I'm not going to be able to get that number up no matter how hard I try. So I need you to trust me here, and I need you to follow these directions so that we don't leave anything on the table. Just avoid the conversation if it comes up during the first interview. Again, the answer is money's important. I'm glad you brought it up. It's important to you. It's important to me. But I'm really here to explore the opportunity, and if it makes sense and we decide to move forward together, at that time I'll be prepared to respond to your very best offer. And that way you get out of having to be in the position of sort of negotiating right there your compensation, because if you answer it, I can assure you that it is in fact a negotiation, and the first one to answer is going to lose. Secondly, the question will often come up, why do you want to leave, or why are you here? And I'm more comfortable with the why are you here question rather than the why do you want to leave question. Because the simple fact is that I came after you because I had a search with a client, and then through mutual dialogue we discovered that it might make sense for you. So even though it might make sense for you, you haven't really actually come to the decision yet that you're 100% committed to leaving. Okay? You may leave for the right opportunity, but it's yet to be determined if this particular opportunity is the right one for you. So you haven't really decided to leave the organization yet. And that actually is the question, the answer to the question that you should, give back to the employer. Well, Mr. Employer, it remains to be seen if I'm going to leave the organization. I'm here to explore the opportunity, and again, if it makes sense for us to move forward, I'll be prepared to respond to your very best offer at that time. So the psychology of this and the psychodynamic of this in sort of the selling parlance is that we're actually using the objection itself to overcome the objection. By giving the employer exactly back what he's asked us, we're giving it right back to him and saying, well, that's exactly why we're not going to talk about that question right now, because it has yet to be determined if I'm going to leave the organization. So in other words, you're very subtly telling the employer, hey, look, you need to do a pretty good job of selling me, or this isn't going to go any further. So anyway, those are the two important questions that candidates ask about all the time. How do I handle money, and how do I handle if they say, geez, why do you want to leave? Obviously, when you talk about your current organization, you want to talk about them in a positive light. You want to be matter of fact, but be positive. You do not want to be disparaging about the company or the people in it in any way. And something that is very helpful, or will prove very helpful when you're preparing for your interview, is that you also want to look at the reasons why you left a role, and then the specific reasons why you went to a certain role in a certain organization. Have that also in that list when you look at the list of the 2 or 3 things that you're most proud of in each of the roles you've had. Also add those answers to that list so that we can have that information available to us, and we'll use that appropriately. Lastly, in the preparation for our interview, we want to talk about bringing the interview to a close. There will be a time when you sense that the interview is coming to a close with a particular individual or a particular organization. And I think it's very important, especially if you're in the client services or business development or in a very senior executive role, that you do the classic selling thing, which is always asking for the business. Obviously, if you spend an hour or 2 hours with a company and you're not interested, don't ask the closing question. But if you're interested and you think you're going to want to move forward to the next phase, you've got to ask for the opportunity to do that. And the way that you ask is this: Mr. Employer, is there anything standing in the way of us moving forward to the next step? Again, is there anything standing in the way of us moving forward to the next step? Now, this is a direct closing question that I want you to ask the employer at the end of the interview. Now, there may be an answer, okay? And there may be one of a couple of different answers, and you need to